Although the Progressive Era brought many reforms within labor laws, the Radium girls demonstrated how corrupt the labor laws were through the neglect of corporations regarding safety as well as disregard for their own employees. To this day, women still suffer in the workplace, whether that's unequal pay, discrimination, or harassment. The Radium girls fought for equality for women in the workplace, and their legacy is still very prevalent today. When World War I started, male soldiers were quickly being shipped off to serve. The Progressive Era was still growing rapidly in the United States, a period of industrialization and production. When male factory workers left to serve in the Army, this left many jobs open. These roles were largely filled by women. There was a high demand for weapons and other war materials produced in factories. The Radium girls were female factory workers in the radium dial industry. When radium was discovered by Marie Curie in 1898, scientists found a way to turn it into paint. Corporations used this in the war effort to assist soldiers. The paint was put on watch dials so soldiers could see their watches in the dark. During this era of corruption, big businesses and corporations purposefully ignored the safety of their employees. This is shown in a lecture from 1904 by Ernest Rutherford titled Radioactive Substances. Rutherford speaks about the dangers of radium and the unknown extent to its effects. He says, "While it's difficult to overestimate the importance of the work on radioactivity, I must emphasize that, at present, the study of these substances requires great care. The phenomena we observe in these materials are powerful and often invisible, and may exert an influence on living tissues. Although we are yet to comprehend the full extent of the effects of radiation, it is clear that certain precautions should be taken in handling the substances, as their nature suggests the possibility of harm with prolonged exposure." Although this lecture was published, it was still largely ignored by radium paint and dial corporations, such as URSC. Companies didn't want to tarnish their reputations or lose business, so they covered these health risks and issues up. In a kit for refurnishing radium hands, a guide is featured. It goes over safety briefly, instructing the user not to ingest the paint or put it near their mouth. At the end of the guide, it reads, "Caution. This is a genuine radium compound. Handle with care. Keep out of mouth and away from open sores." The women who worked at these radium watch dial factories were directly instructed to bring the paintbrush to a point by licking it, creating a sharper tool to paint with. This instruction ultimately led to many deaths and unnecessary consequences. Companies neglected their workers, specifically the women, disregarding their safety. In a journal published in 1902, before the deaths of these women began in 1917, the risk of this deadly substance is featured. The journal reads, "Radium, in sufficient quantities, is able to produce ulcerations on the skin and damage internal tissues. Those working closely with it are at risk of severe burns and possible long-term damage. The radiations emitted by radium are harmful and require precautions. But we are as yet to ensure the full consequences of exposure over long periods." Companies knew of these dangers, or at least of the possibility of them, but still disregarded them. 5 brave women, also known as the Radium Girls, decided to fight for their rights. In an article published by the New York Times titled "5 Women Doomed to Die" in 1928, talks about these brave women. The article says, "In New Jersey, there are 5 women who have for a year tried to obtain a hearing in the courts. They are crippled by radium poisoning contracted in the plant of the United States Radium Corporation at Orange, New Jersey, where they were employed to paint numerals on the dials of watches. 13 other women who worked in that plant are already dead. These 5 women are doomed. 6 physicians, including Dr. Cecil K. Drinker of the Harvard Medical School, have examined them and agree that they only have a short time to live. They are trying to sue the company for damages. The first suit was filed in the New Jersey Supreme Court on May 18, 1927, a year ago. As matters stand now, the Jersey courts have decreed that they must wait until September 24, 1928, this coming September, before they can have a hearing to determine whether their case can be tried at all. It is not certain whether these women can live that long." Neglect becomes a major theme in these women's case. If word doesn't get out for these companies, they will be okay. Doctors were instructed by these radium dial companies to claim that the women who were dying were being affected by other diseases such as syphilis. They did this to undermine the true consequences of radium. Doctors, dentists, and researchers complied with the demands from companies to not release their data. This corrupt trade demonstrated the unfair and unproportional ramifications of the deadly substance used by innocent women. In another article published in the New York Times in 1928 titled "The Silent Poison: Young Women Battle for Justice Against Radium Dial," discusses these women, known as the Radium Girls, and their fight for justice. Their safety was seen as secondary to the gains of the company, ultimately resulting in their deaths. The article states how a group of women, some barely in their 20s, are now fighting for justice against their former employee, Radium Dial, which failed to inform them of the deadly effects of the substance they were handling. These young women, now suffering from debilitating illnesses, represent the unspoken dangers of a new and booming industry. Not only was this new industry booming, but the industry's workers were also ignored. The Radium Girls were mistreated by big corporations, demonstrating the corrupt labor laws and standards from the time of 1900 to 1940, through the neglect of these women's safety, as well as disregard for the company's own employees.